Hello, this is Mr. Jarrett, and this is a continuation of the cartoon portrait tutorial of day 2 and day 3. So in day 1, we set up our image in Illustrator. We found our image, we did the Illustrator setup, set our swatches, and now we are moving on to tracing of the line work. So this again is the continuation of your foundation of the entire project. So what we're doing here today is creating the outlines of all of the skin creases, the nose outline, the face outline, the neck outline if you have one, and close outline if you have one. So you can see here at one time I attempted to do a self-portrait, and if you've ever taken an art class where you've done a drawing, self-portraits are not easy. They are very difficult, and after I got about halfway through this, I started kicking myself saying, why did I even attempt to do this? But you'll see later on that I learned some things by doing it, so I guess there was some positive coming out of it, but I also found out that my directions at the time needed to be updated. So my directions now that I have been years of changing directions back and forth to figure out exactly what we need to do here. So what I have found, since we are using the mouse and mainly the pen tool, a lot of the videos you'll find online are using tablets like Wacom tablets. So they are using the paintbrush tool, but we are mainly using the pen tool. That's why I've worked so heavily on it so far this semester with you to create all of these little outlines. So notice I wrote do not trace the hair, the eyes, the mouth, glasses, etc., meaning extra stuff. Yours should somewhat look like this, or maybe even less than this when you are all the way finished. Okay, so we are going to be using the pen tool to kind of follow along. And then over here on the right, I have some colors and some profile changes that I'm going to come back to you in a second. So where I left off was on this Jack Black picture where I uploaded the images, we have a copied one, we set our swatches and everything. So I'm going to start out by doing the nose. Okay, now the nose itself is a little bit of a different type of thing to trace than anything else on your face. If you really think about what your nose is, it's a bone with cartilage on it that's raised up off of the surface of your face, and your skin wraps around it. You're like, okay, Mr. Jared, I get it. Yeah, it's a nose. All right, well, the ears, all cartilage, right? And they're just kind of sticking off. They're just its own weird little shape. You might not even be drawing ears because a lot of these pictures are going to be straight on. So in this example, I specifically picked a picture that the ears are covered, so I didn't have to do it, right? I also picked a picture where the jaw line's covered, so I didn't have to do it. Cheap there a little bit. But you might not have a full-blown ear. So your nose is the one weird thing that you're going to be using a lot of shadows and highlights later to depict that up and back down and ins and outs of your nose that raise up or down. An ear, you can kind of get away with just little black lines to do that because the cartilage is somewhat different on every single person of how it raises up and down. But for the most part, people's nose are kind of the same shape. Okay, so in elementary school, you might have followed the entire bridge up here, and I know some of you will make a box just like this all the way around the nose. I'm going to recommend not doing that. What I want you to do is kind of zoom into the nostril and look at the coloration difference here on the picture itself. So you can see that this is a darker skin than here. That's because this part is raised up. So I'm going to follow this line, and you can see it kind of stops right here. I almost have this little triangle of pixels. I'm going to stop right around in there. I'm going to curve this up, and you can see the skin color changes right around in here. So I'm just going to have an outside of the nostril curve. To do this, I want to take my stroke to be jet black and the fill to be nothing. So you can change that down here or up here if you're comfortable with it. So I'm going to change my fill to nothing. And when I say jet black, we're working in RGB. So our computer a lot of times is going to default to this CMYK list right here. That's how printers print. It's a different color scheme, more or less. So this says it's 100% key or K for black, but that's for a printer. It can't print jet black. We're working on a computer, so I'm going to go up to this black. Okay, so that is the jet black. That's 100% black. Just to kind of show you the difference, if I'm on this one, if I double click my color picker, you see how I'm not all the way down here? This is absolute black. So that's the before and after. Okay, so I want to be on this one. Now I'm going to get my pen tool And I'm going to switch from either the swatches layer that you were on to the line work layer. And I'm going to start right down here where I saw that coloration change and just kind of go up to here. Now, some of you might not have this perfectly little curving nose. You might have kind of a flat part over here on your nostril. You're going to know how to use the pen tool, hopefully by now. But I'm going to curve around his nose and just kind of let go. Control Shift A if it's been a while for you. Control Shift A. Do that same thing on the opposite side. Okay, Control Shift A. And some of your faces themselves might be in a different angle than mine. Mine's kind of straight on. He's tilted to the side a little bit, so your nose might be a little bit different. In my picture, even though I see this crease right here, I'm not going to put a hard black line there. I can do that later on just with shadows. If you're on a side profile of their face, you might have a hard crease right there. So everybody's is a little bit different. It's kind of hard to do these demonstrations and say, oh, this is one way of doing it. This is just an example. So for the nostrils, I got a little trick for you. You can kind of see if you do have an underneath picture of their nose here where you do see like a nostril shadow, this is going to work for you. If you don't have this nostril shadow, maybe you don't even need to do this. So if it's like a straight on picture or a downwards angle picture where they don't have the shadow, you won't have to do this next part. You're still going to be tracing the nostrils itself, but you're not going to be doing the fill color here. So I can see the skin kind of comes over here out a little bit past, and we all know this does curve down. Now I'm not going to have a curved line all the way down here that would just kind of look weird, but I am going to come out past this dark shadow. So somewhere right about here, and I see this kind of curves up and then flat lines a little bit. So right here at the end of the curve, I'm just going to do that, and then it kind of flattens out, and here it starts to curve again. So I'll just make a little bit of a handle and kind of curve down like that. All right, Control Shift A. Now this is the trick that I'm talking about. So this shadow starts right around in here, kind of comes up to somewhere about here. Right? Now instead of trying to follow that line perfect, I'm just going to go like this. Make some big ugly shape up above. Doesn't matter what it looks like. I'm going to fill this in, and I'm going to use the Shape Builder tool. So I'll switch to my arrow and select these two, get my Shape Builder tool, hold in Alt, and just click on the outside, and it cuts it right down to this. So then I'll do that again for the other nostril. And I wanted to pick this part down here as well. So you always have to kind of guess, I guess to say here, or kind of go back and forth and just see what looks good for you. Should I come all the way down around and connect it to the other one? Do I just do a small little piece down here? I've gone back and forth with this picture, and it doesn't really look better either way. So you just kind of choose on your nose what works best for you. And I can't necessarily tell you the best way either until, maybe I draw it. So this one, I'm just going to kind of do all the way down and just a slight curve. Now I notice I'm still on my fill, so I want to switch this back over to my stroke. Control Shift A. And we'll see if we like this. If we don't, I'll delete it. So I'm going to put in that little shadow. Go out past, fill it in, select the two, and then I'll use my Shape Builder tool. Now I know you might not see it, but I do. It kind of bugs me. Right here on this line, it looks like it comes into almost a little bit of a point here. So right around in here, it does not curve as nice. You want your lines to be real nice and smooth. So sometimes less is more here, and that goes with clicks as well. You do not want to have a ton of clicks. You want your lines to be nice and smooth in their curvatures. Now, this is going to start to look okay. Yeah, that somewhat looks like a nose, but this next part is really going to kind of change the life and the shape of your face. So that's going to be changing the profiles. So I notice I said no profiles can be this straight up uniform profile. I have all internal lines being the football shape is what I always call it in class, and outlines or longer single lines being this double football shape. So if I come back over here and I select these. Now it can't be this one because I don't want to have an outline on that. But if I select just the lines itself, so these four, and I change this to the football shape, it's going to start to add a little bit more pizzazz to it and give it a little bit more life. Okay, again, you just kind of figure out here which one you like, if you want just the single piece or just a here. Okay, so that's my nose. Now my direction said on here that I want to take the hair or take the face outline into the hair. So here's my example of this. And I'm going to pull up my self-portrait. Okay, and I'm going to turn off my original image. You can also see on this image, I started with a very blurry image, not what you should be doing. So it made it even harder, but that's the only image I had at the time. So this line itself that's following around my head, you can see it's kind of choppy up here. Well, that goes into my hair. So if I'm following this, this goes right up around my collar, right? Right up through here, and you can see I kind of went over my skin a little bit. That's fine. Just make it kind of look good for yourself. It follows straight up here, and my beard hair didn't really go out past my face. There was a little bit of skin there in the original picture. So I just made this smooth. It just kind of came up to here. I traced right around the ear. And then in this spot right here, I had to make some decisions. My hair actually comes back to here. So did I stop this short? Do I go to here? I just kind of figured, you know what, I'm going to have a tiny little black line here. You won't see it too much. So I stopped right there. But while I'm following the skin, I needed it to be as nice and neat as possible. Very close to the skin and smooth. Now this part where I put my line up through here, I'm hiding it in my hair. Notice my head hair layer is up above this line work. So later on, all of my hair is going to hide this black line. It's going to cover over it. Okay, so that works all the way over to here because I have hair, 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 and then right around in here is where my hairline stops because of how my head is tilted. So once again, I'm back to following the skin. Nice and neat. Then it stopped right around here because my beard hair came over here. So I hid that line inside my beard hair and then popped back out to my collar and kind of came down here to complete this. So just to kind of show you with the double football how it kind of makes this look nice and neat. And I'll also change this to a color so it stands out. So as you can see, with that double football, it gets thicker in some spots and thinner in others. Now that looks cool, but that does cause some issues here or there, and I'll show you why here in a second. Now all of these other lines are just single lines. So this line itself, it started right here on top of this. It goes all the way down, and it kind of just wraps down around and ends here. These other lines as well touch everything. Now that is huge. That is very important. And the important part here that I'm emphasizing is that there can be no open gaps or no open edges. Okay, and what that means is when you're drawing, you cannot have these lines like, say, this one. You cannot have this stop short. You can have this just like here. You'd be like, oh, well, that's pretty close. No, it can't. Okay, this line needs to be touching the other line. If it's not touching the other line, that's going to cause issues on day 3. Okay, so day 2 is just tracing everything. And you can see like for an ear, something like this, your cartilage is going to be a little strange of how you do it. Feel free to just kind of go back here, turn your image on, and print this image. So if you just hit Control P, and you print it to HS Tech Ed. Now the printer might change, so you might want to ask me, down the road. Our IT services are always updating our printers when the newer ones come out, so the name might have changed, but the current one is called HS Tech Ed, and if you print this, it's going to print to the actual scale size of a piece of paper, and I can get a Sharpie marker out if you want me to help you, and I'll just trace over and give you the exact answers of what I personally think you should do, and it'll probably help you. You'll probably go through it a lot faster than trying to second guess. Okay. Now, the one thing I will say on my example, because I noticed, when I did this, some things were good, some things weren't. Well, here's some of the things that I've noticed that down the road on this project kind of came back to bite me in the butt. In the ear, that's fine. Those black little lines in your ear, that doesn't make you look old if you have a black outline on your ear. But these skin creases did. Okay, these skin creases really looked, it made me age a lot more. It made me look like I had more kids at the time than I did. So I probably have those now, but I didn't back then as much. So these lines, especially if you are doing like somebody that has a very pale complexion or a very fair complexion, or even like a female that has a lot of makeup. Some of these images that you're going to be finding online, most of the images that you're going to be finding online of a famous person or somebody you're looking up, most of them are on, some type of runway, unless you've got Jack Black with his shirt off here on stage. But a lot of these are staged photos, as you can kind of see the backgrounds. So they are taken with very, very good cameras. And a lot of these people will either have makeup on, or the camera itself and this picture itself probably has some Photoshop work done to it before it is uploaded to the internet. So putting dark black lines on somebody's face doesn't always look good. So these black lines I probably should have toned down. And if you really are dead set of putting on some of these lines like this, at least make them like a half point, okay? 0.5. Don't make them 1. So everything else should probably be about 1 or 2. I made this one around my head too, just because it was such a long line that when I made it 1, these were very, very, very thin here. Okay? So this is kind of the tracing of day 2.